Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Osteoporosis Canada's cooking demo webinar in partnership with Danone Canada and Oikos high-protein Greek yogurt. Before we begin, Osteoporosis Canada acknowledges the land that our offices located in Toronto are on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. My name is Tracie Napoli, Director of Fund Development and MARCOM at Osteoporosis Canada, and I will be your cooking demo host today. The webinar will provide general information about cooking and food knowledge, and it's not intended as individualized health or nutrition advice, but if you have questions about nutrition, please consult a physician or registered dietitian. Also, during the webinar, if you have questions or comments related to the topic today, you can enter your questions or comments by clicking the Q&A icon located at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the webinar within the time available. Nutrition is a key component for strong and healthy bones. Calcium, vitamin D, protein, magnesium, and vitamin K. Calcium is one of the key minerals that supports new bone formation and helps maintain strong bones. Vitamin D ensures our bodies can absorb enough calcium and supports muscle function. Protein is necessary to build and repair bone tissue and helps keep muscles strong. Magnesium helps our bodies use vitamin D, important for calcium absorption, and vitamin K activates a protein that helps build bone and bind minerals, such as calcium, to the bone structure. And Osteoporosis Canada recommends that whenever possible, to get bone-building nutrients like calcium and protein through food sources. So how do you know if you're getting enough bone-building nutrients daily? Well, read the product label. We encourage you to check out the products while you're grocery shopping, make note of the serving size, and take a look at the nutrition label. Also, we've had questions about the difference between Greek yogurt and regular yogurt. Now, all yogurts are the result of fermenting milk by adding active bacteria cultures, but the main difference is in the protein content. Greek yogurt has more protein per serving. Greek yogurt also has a thicker texture because it's filtered and it contains less water, which results in a creamy texture. And this makes Greek yogurt a great ingredient in today's featured recipe. So our featured recipe today, roasted tomato and creamy kale pesto pasta. And each serving contains 450 milligrams of calcium and 31 grams of protein. You can find this and other recipes on the Osteoporosis Canada website at osteoporosis.ca/recipes. I will also pop the link to the recipe in the chat. And of course, yogurt is a great source, as we've said, of calcium and high-quality protein. It's now my pleasure to introduce Emily Richards, who's a professional home economist, freelance food writer, chef, and she's the author and co-author of 11 cookbooks. Emily also writes and develops recipes for print and online publications that include everyday cooking and healthy eating. And she can be found on TV, radio, and webcasts, just like this one. Please welcome Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hey, Tracie, how are you?
I am fabulous and excited about this recipe today.
So am I. I actually have Lincoln, who's my little Yorkie, right at my feet because he's waiting for some.
Waiting for you to drop something.
I am excited about this recipe because it actually comes together pretty quickly. Lots of great color. And if we're thinking spring is in the air, this is definitely a dish that will showcase that.
Absolutely. And before we get started, as usual, we're going to do a draw at the end of the webinar for an unbreakable apron. Emily is lovely. She is modeling the apron. So if you're on at the end of the webinar and I pick your name, we will contact you and we'll ship it out. So Emily, Greek yogurt and pasta.
I know it might be something that you haven't tried at home. And much like Tracie, you mentioned right off the top that Greek yogurt, that creaminess that it provides, and we're using a plain Greek yogurt so that it will absorb the other flavors that we're using, it really helps to create this pasta texture. So nice and creamy and flavorful, and it really does have a nice freshness to it. So that little bit of zing that yogurt provides will really kind of bring out all the flavors that we're incorporating into it. And of course, I talked about color. I added some color to the kitchen today with basil and kale and tomatoes, and that really kind of helps build the color, the flavor, and the texture of this pasta dish. So I said it's going to be quick to make. You probably, when you make it at home, will be working through it and it'll be done in no time. I'm going to be talking through it, so it might take a little bit longer. But as Tracie mentioned, if you have any questions as I'm going along, or if you think I've missed something, please feel free to let me know, because I have the recipe here. Sometimes I get into it and then I just kind of forget, but I always have the recipe here, so I try not to forget any ingredients. And the recipe is posted on the Osteoporosis site, and Tracie can give you the link as well, just in case you want to follow along. All right, so I'm going to start off with my veggies because we want to get some roasted flavor here, that roasted tomato flavor. So if you're thinking tomatoes right now, not in season, they're not going to have a lot of flavor. One great vegetable, tomato, to fall back on is a grape tomato because it does have that natural sweetness to it. So we're actually going to roast them and get a little bit more flavor in them. And we're going to add some garlic. Maybe not some, maybe a lot for some of you. 6 cloves of garlic I'm going to add. Now, if you're already thinking, a little too much garlic for me, roasting the garlic actually softens the flavor and it softens the garlic. So as you taste it, this creaminess comes about and sweetness from the garlic after it's roasted. So it's absolutely delicious. That's not to say if you want to add only 4 cloves of garlic or 2 cloves of garlic, you certainly can do that. And it also will depend on the size of your garlic cloves. So if you have really, really big garlic cloves, you might want to cut them in half. Or if you have really small ones, you might want to double up and add a few extra, okay? So I've halved the grape tomatoes. I have my garlic cloves in here as well. And I'm going to add a little seasoning. I'm going to add some dried oregano, okay, and a little bit of salt and pepper. So nice and simple. Again, we're kind of building flavor as we go, so we want to make sure that everything has some nice seasoning. And I also have my oven on, 425 degrees. We want it nice and hot so that we can get that flavor kind of sealed in and nice texture. And I have a little roasting pan here with some parchment paper. This will really help for cleanup because the sweetness, that natural sugar that comes out of the tomatoes, can cause a little bit of extra cleanup for you later. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of, I'm using extra virgin olive oil for a little bit of flavor to the sauce as well. So I'm just going to add a couple tablespoons here. And then we're just going to mix this up and get this into the oven. Okay, just like that. Give it a little toss. Now, if you don't happen to have dried oregano on hand, this could be dried thyme. Dried basil would work really nicely in here as well. If you have an Italian seasoning mix that has a nice combination of fresh herbs, you could totally substitute that as well. Okay. And if you want a little kick of heat, you could actually add a pinch of hot pepper flakes to this as well, which would be quite lovely. All right, so I'm going to bring this closer to me and then just get these tomatoes right onto my baking sheet and just kind of spread them out so that they're in a nice single layer so that they all get a chance to get some color and tenderness. There we are. And they are going to go into the oven. So I like to think of this recipe as a few different components. I like to think about that for a lot of recipes because I like them to have versatility. So, and we'll talk about that as we kind of work through all the components of the recipe. So that's kind of one, the vegetables. You're going to have these beautiful roasted tomatoes and garlic. And if you want to break this apart, because this might be too much for you to do in one fell swoop, you can roast these off and leave them in the fridge the day before, okay? Or if you have a lot of grape tomatoes that are kind of starting to wilt a little bit, you can roast them off, freeze them, and then pull them out and make this recipe at another time, okay? So it's all about making it accessible and easy for you to do at home. So here's my nice big pot of water. And I will admit, I did pre-boil it so that it wouldn't take so long coming to the boil. And that sometimes, can very well be the longest part of a recipe is waiting for that water to boil. So this is just plain old boiling water. I have no salt in it right now because we are going to make that kale pesto. And I want to blanch the kale and the fresh basil. Okay. So I'm doing it for a couple reasons. One, I want to just cook that kale a little bit so that it kind of changes the flavor, softens the flavor a little bit. And I also want to keep that bright green color. And if you looked at the photo before we started, I think it's great. It has that nice bright green color. And this is one of the things that you can do to help keep the color in a pesto is just by blanching. We don't need it in there for very long. So I have 1 cup of chopped kale, and I'm just using the curly kale. If you happen to have other types of kale, you can use a red kale if you happen to have it. You could use that. If you have other greens that you'd like to use, you want something a little bit hearty here. So collard greens would work. They have a little bit more flavor, but make sure you chop them and still blanch them because it will soften the kale. Okay, so just 1 cup of kale going into the pot, and I'm going to get my slotted spoon here. And I want these in first because they have a little bit more texture. They're a little bit more fibrous. So I want it to cook. Again, we're not kind of cooking it. We're just kind of, well, blanching it. That's really all blanching is kind of cooking it for a very, very short amount of time. And then I'm going to take that 1/2 cup of fresh basil leaves and add that as well. Okay. And it smells amazing. Like, I think basil is one of those herbs that just makes you think of spring and summer and keeps everything nice and fresh. All right, so that's about 30 seconds that basil is in there. And then you just want to kind of scoop everything up. And I have a colander in my sink. So I'm just going to put this into my colander and get the remainder here. I'm going to turn off the pot as well. And you'll notice that the water turns a little bit green. I don't want to take this pot to the sink because why waste this water? It's already boiled. This is what we're going to cook our pasta in, right? So you make sure that you leave that pot of water right on the stove. And I do want to use some cold water to rinse it so that it keeps that nice bright green color. And then I'm just going to leave it in the sink to drain. Okay. I'm going to fish out these other few here and then just add them as well. Okay. Okay, that's easy enough, right? And again, if this is something that you want to do ahead, I'm using fresh kale. So you buy kale in those nice big bunches. You could also buy it in bags. You could use baby kale here if you wanted to, because that is available as well. And the great thing about kale, if you're thinking, Emily, I got to buy this big bunch of kale. You're only asked me to use 1 cup. What am I supposed to do with the rest of it? Couple of things. There's lots of great recipes on osteoporosis.ca with kale, so you can make other recipes. But if you know that you're not going to use it right away, you can actually just chop it up, put it into an airtight container or Ziploc bag, take all the air out, and freeze it. It's a great vegetable to freeze. It's a great green to have on hand. And then when you want to make soup or stew or risotto or anything really, or pasta, you can grab a handful of that frozen kale and just add it. So that's an easy way to add some color, some flavor, and a little bit of nutrients to whatever you're making, okay? So, blender, appliances. If you were here with me, I'd say, how many of you have a blender? And you could put up your hand. I'm not going to be able to tell who's putting up their hand, but I know not everybody has a blender. And some of you may not want to get another appliance, and that's okay. Because you can make this pesto in a food processor. You could use an immersion blender and just kind of go up and down with it. You could use a little mini chopper. If all else, you could use a knife and chop everything really fine and stir it together. You could even use a mortar and pestle. So there's lots of options for this that you can use. I like using a blender because it creates a really, really extra smooth texture. We already have the smooth texture from the yogurt, but combining everything together makes it a little bit smoother. So I'm going to basically just add all my ingredients into my blender. So I'm going to bring this here so that I can list off the ingredients and make sure I have everything in here. While I bring everything over, Tracie, did we have any questions so far?
Hi, you actually answered a couple of them. So somebody had asked if you could use frozen kale. So if you, as you said, if you have extra fresh kale and you can freeze it. So absolutely, you can use the frozen kale. But in regards to freezing your kale, if that's what you're going to do, Should you blanch it before you freeze it? That's
That's
a
a great that is a great question. I would still blanch it, and just for not as long, because the once it freezes, it changes the cells, right, in the kale. So it just needs, you could actually put it in with the basil and it would be enough time. Or if you'd like, you could actually blanch all your kale first, chill it with the cold water, drain it, and then freeze it, and then you have the blanched kale ready to go, which is actually great to add to, something right at the end. Or for some people, they don't like raw kale in salads, but that blanched kale would work beautifully in salads. So that kind of gives you a few options there, which would work really nicely.
That's super. And you mentioned collard greens because somebody did ask, could you swap out the collard greens instead of the kale? And when Emily and I we go through the recipes, and Emily's working on creating new ideas for meals, we're always looking to have ingredients with calcium and protein, and we do use kale a lot because it does contain calcium, so we're bumping up the calcium in the recipe. Collard greens, however, they are also a source of calcium. If you're on the Osteoporosis Canada website, you can check the calcium calculator. So for one serving, which is half a cup, it's about 133 milligrams of calcium. But if you don't have either and you want to use a different green, if it doesn't have as much calcium, it's okay, because this is not just about one meal. It's about all the choices you make during the day, during the week. So you just kind of need to balance it and figure out where you're at. Okay, Emily, I see you've got some other stuff out there.
Yes, I do have some other ingredients. And what I do on that note about, talking about different meals, what I think, and I don't know if anyone kind of, when you were talking, Tracie, about the calcium and the protein in this dish, I want to know, and I mean, you're welcome to say anything in the chat. Is
Put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat. I want to know if you were surprised to see how much protein was in this dish, because oftentimes we don't think of pastas as having a lot of protein. And it's really how we've incorporated these ingredients and the ingredients that we're using that has created a wonderful protein-filled dish. So yeah, let us know if you were surprised when Tracie was talking about those numbers, because I think it's great. And I think it gives us options to incorporate, first of all, different ingredients to create delicious meals and have the protein that we need as well. Okay, so we'll come back to that and we'll see how many surprises. Maybe a surprise face. That's all we need. All right. So the pesto itself, I have the kale and the basil in here. I didn't squeeze it out. I want a little bit of that residual moisture in there, so I didn't squeeze it out. I just let it drain nicely, and I have it in my blender. And then we're going to start adding our other ingredients. And you don't need to be picky about this, because we are going to let the blender do the work. We're just going to put everything in here and enjoy that lovely whirring noise. So we are going to use some Parmesan cheese. I freshly grated it. So this is just a chunk of Parmesan. You could use Parmigiano Reggiano, you could use a Grana Padano, you could use a local Parmesan to you, but just freshly grate it, because that's really what's going to help build the flavor, and it's going to melt really nicely. We're using it in a couple places in the recipe, so we want it to create help that delicious creamy texture come through. So I'm going to use half a cup of this fresh parm. So I'm just going to measure it out in my measuring cup, and then I'm going to put it in here. And then I'm also going to add a 1/4 cup of our high protein plain Greek yogurt. Okay, that's going to go in here as well. And then I'm going to add some extra virgin olive oil. And if you've made pesto before, you may have added pine nuts or a different type of nut. I'm using almonds, and I'm just going to show you here. I have them in my skillet because I toasted them a little bit. And that is just a simple, easy way to add more flavor. So something that's already going to have wonderful flavor is going to get a little bit more help by toasting those almonds. And I just use slivered almonds because they'll break down a little bit easier in the food processor. Sorry, the blender, but you can use a food processor. All right, so what else do I need in here? Lemon juice. So just a little bit of lemon juice. That's going to give us that nice bright flavor and help with that color. And then just a little bit of seasoning. I'm going to add a little bit of salt in there. Okay, so I'm just going to put this lid on, and you will have to scrape the sides, okay? So you will see me kind of going in here a couple of times because I want to make sure that this is, let's make sure it's on first. There we go. So it's going to start to make a little bit of pulsing noise here. But you don't have to go in and kind of scrape the sides. You want to make sure that everything is nice and even. So I like to, I'll show you what's happening here. Okay, so you can already start to see that beautiful green color coming through. So just get in there and kind of scrape everything down. And this is also just to ensure that you have that nice, beautiful, smooth texture coming through. Okay. So I will put the lid back on. I've had too many incidences where the lid was not on, and I had to wipe things off the ceiling. And we don't want to do that today. There we go. So while that's going to go, my pot of water has started to boil. So I'm going to add some salt. And the salt is a little bit. You know, when you put stuff in the kitchen and you say you smell it, you make sure that it's there.
Hey, Emily.
Yes.
I think the blender is just causing your audio to dip a little bit here and there, but
right.
it looks like it's all creamy already.
I think it is. Let's take another peek.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. I'll show you in that camera.
Yum.
And then this way we won't have to turn it on again to make noise, but it has that nice, beautiful green color. So thinking springtime. And I'll just set it aside over here. Okay. And I put some salt in my water. So we wanted that water, you saw how quickly it came back to the boil because it was already boiled. We're blanching our kale and our basil. So I'm going to put in my pasta. And in the recipe, you'll notice that the pasta I called for was with added fiber. So that is just, if you can find it, it will say right on the box, added fiber. And it's white pasta typically. So you could also use a whole grain pasta if you wanted to. And we are using a 375 gram box of pasta. So not that full pound of pasta. So if all you're finding is 450 gram packages or boxes of pasta, you can just take a little bit out. Or if you wanted to cook it all and then take some out, because it's so filling, you really don't need all that extra pasta in it. It covers enough for 4 people. So I added my pasta and I should be stirring it, but I don't have anything to stir with. There we go. So we're going to get this going and stir it. So I did add that little bit of salt. If you are someone who is reducing your sodium intake and perhaps you are doing steps like not adding salt to your pasta water, that's totally fine. So just go ahead and cook that pasta as you would. And then what you can do is just taste everything in the end and see, perhaps instead of adding that additional salt, you could add a little bit more Parmesan cheese, okay? So Tracie, I'm gonna ask if you could do a quick review of, were people surprised about the amount of protein?
Well, actually, they were surprised about a few different things, actually.
Okay.
Just the
maybe I opened up a can of worms.
There we go. No, it's great. I was just reading a couple of them. So yes, they were surprised by the amount of protein. Some were surprised by the amount of calcium and also like the other nutrients, and also the fat. So let's just talk about some of the ingredients. Perfect. You're going to get your calcium and protein actually also from the almonds. You're going to also get some fat from there. You're also with the Parmesan. Parmesan has a lot of calcium. 1 tablespoon has 70 milligrams. So the harder the cheese, generally the more calcium you're going to get. Also, there's protein there. Of course, the high protein yogurt also has calcium. So it's really about, sometimes it's taking some of, a few ingredients and putting them together. And that's where you get that really great number of daily nutrients. The pasta also has protein, as all pasta does, I think, has protein. And somebody was just saying, they choose other types of pasta that they eat. I think they said black bean pasta. So there's all different kinds. You just need product labels. I know it takes more time, but once you get the hang of it and you know what you want to purchase, then it makes it quicker, to kind of go through the grocery store or however you're getting your groceries. There was a question regarding lactose-free Parmesan. I think you just need to check your grocer. I think it depends what is available to you. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure. Emily, I'm not sure if you.
Well, it's an availability thing. It's really
Yeah,
based on where you live.
yeah,
Sometimes those types of ingredients, more specialty type ingredients, as much as I'd like to say they are available everywhere, there are still places that they're not as easy to find. But you can kind of look for a lot of lactose-free products. And they are available. But again, as Tracie mentioned, you do have to kind of check those labels because they are not made
yeah.
the same with the same ingredients. So it doesn't always reflect the same nutrients that we're obviously talking about here. So that's just something to note, which is important.
Yeah. And the last point, somebody said, if you have a nut allergy, just omit the almonds. I'm not sure if there's a substitute for anyone with a nut allergy, Emily.
Well, if there is a nut allergy, what you can use, I often use seeds. And obviously, if seeds are an issue, then you can leave it out completely. But toasting things like sunflower seeds or even sesame seeds are quite lovely in a pesto like this. It just, again, it brightens it, adds a nice little bit of flavor. And whether it's a seed or a nut, I still toast it because it really does add a nice additional flavor. And it's just those simple things that you can create this pesto and then use it in different things. So we're making a hot pasta dish today. That doesn't mean that you can't make this pesto. Remember the components I was telling you about? Here's the roasted tomatoes and garlic, by the way. They're nice and golden, and they are beautifully roasted. And this is just something that if you wanted to make this and scoop it up, and I've seen people eat it with a spoon right out of the baking sheet, and it's quite tasty. So there's your one component. The second component being the pesto, you can make this on its own and keep it in the refrigerator. And pasta salad, who doesn't love pasta salad with a pesto on it? This would make a great dressing. Add a little bit more lemon juice to it to brighten it up and give it a little bit more flavor. You could serve this with some roasted vegetables and have it as a dressing for roasted vegetables. So this is another kind of component of the recipe that you can take out and create it and use it in different ways at home. The other component, which I'm going to do next, is our creamy part. So where we get the extra creamy part of the recipe. So I'm just going to move my veggies aside for a second here. And I'm also trying to keep an eye on my pasta. So definitely keep stirring it. I'm using spaghetti. If you wanted to, this would work with penne or other long pastas as well. And I'm going to taste it. That's really, so we always give you a time, right? About 8 minutes. You still have to taste it. Don't always go by the clock. Go by feel, go by taste. So we are going to taste the pasta. And we're not going to go straight to the sink. We're going to take out some of the pasta water because that's going to help create the sauce. So in the sauce element, we have 3/4 cup of our high protein plain Greek yogurt. Okay. So that is the base of it. Then we're going to add some more Parmesan cheese. We're going to add another half a cup of Parmesan cheese right in there. And then we're going to add an egg in here. Okay, so that's going to help create a wonderful texture, give us a little bit of a golden color as well. So just one large egg, and then a little bit of salt and pepper. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my whisk and just whisk this together. So this is a fabulous way to get a creamy pasta sauce. So let's say one night you didn't have time to make the pesto or you ran out of kale and basil. You can just use this and create the sauce with the roasted tomatoes and garlic, and you'll have a fabulous meal. The proportion of calcium and protein will be a little bit different, but it'll still be fabulous and quick. Okay, so I have everything ready to go. My sauce, my pesto, and my vegetables. Now I'm going to taste this pasta and see where we're at here. It looks like it's done. Looks could be deceiving. No, it's done. So I'm going to take my liquid measuring cup and I'm going to, I don't need this much. I think I only need, I think I say half a cup. Let's check the recipe. Half a cup. So we're going to take half a cup of this liquid and slowly pour it into this yogurt or cream mixture, okay? to get that creamy mixture. And we're going to do it slowly so that we temper the yogurt, so that when we add it to the hot pasta, it will all come together. There we are. Check my math here. It's always good to take out a little extra pasta water just in case. Go. And I'm going to go to the sink and drain my pasta. Are there more questions, Tracie, so far? We're okay?
Yeah, I'm going through them, and you know what? Pasta water is magic. It really is. It does.
It truly is.
You think it's like too watery, and then as you kind of keep stirring it, it completely kind of creates that thickening agent that you need without adding cream. But you've got all these great ingredients. Somebody asked, of course, so there are a few things we always try to address. You can definitely choose a gluten-free pasta.
Yes.
And use it. So if you're trying to make this gluten-free, absolutely. You know, the other thing, and this is what I love about having the roasted tomatoes. We want to get, you know, veggies in our diet, but you know, tomatoes aren't really in season in Canada, or they aren't in winter months. But when you roast them, their flavor is so much better than fresh. So we're having this delicious, you know, tomato dish as well with the kale. And then we have people who are like, you know, 4 servings of 4, it's just too much. So the question is, can you actually freeze the pesto, the kale pesto that you made? So if you make it and have it and freeze it, and then only use half the ingredients to make like the pasta and the tomatoes, will that work with the pesto?
Yes, you can freeze the pesto. Don't forget about it in the freezer though. This is not a pesto that you want to leave in there for a year. Because of the components in it, they're fresh and healthy. I'd say a couple weeks, leave it in the freezer. So maybe have it, you know, once a week for the next couple weeks. And then you'll have that delicious flavor again. Make sure it thaws fully. You might have to give it a little whisk to have it all come back together again, but it will definitely be freezable. Now, I've already added my creamy yogurt mixture to the pasta, and I'm going to just take my tomatoes and garlic and add those in there. And any juices that are on the baking pan, okay, in this case, my parchment paper, get those in there as well. And then I'm going to take about half of my pesto in here as well. And if you want, you can put all the pesto in right away. But I actually like to just dollop that freshness on top when I go to eat it. And then just give this a nice big stir. Okay. So the warmth of the hotness of the pasta and the warmth of the pasta water melted that Parmesan, tempered the yogurt. So you end up with this really lovely creamy sauce. Because I'm sure some of you in the back of your mind are thinking, wait a minute, how come the yogurt didn't curdle? And that's the reason why, because of what I just said. Having tempered it and having everything nice and hot at the same temperature works really, really well. So you can see, if you look in the pot here, it's so creamy. And if you didn't think it was creamy enough, you could always add a little bit more of that pasta water. Okay, just like that. And then I guess I should serve up a bowl, right, Tracie?
I'm still here. Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button.
That's okay. I said I should probably serve some of this up so that I can show you how I like to.
Yes, we always have
eat
to
it.
have Emily do the taste test. It looks so good. And sometimes, you know what? Pasta dishes are so quick and easy, and you can put, like, if you wanted to throw other vegetables in there, go right ahead. The yogurt, the other thing is, you know, we're all trying to make purchases where we can use ingredients in more than one way so that, you know, everything's budget friendly. Well, Greek yogurt, you know, in your morning smoothie or a snack with fresh fruit, and then you're using it in your pasta dinner. I mean, it's fantastic, and you're getting all of that. That looks gorgeous, Emily.
There we go. And then, as I said, I like to put a little extra of the pesto on top, just because it has such a beautiful green color. And then you can kind of see the contrast of the color here too, how nice and green it is. And then, of course, I'm a cheese lover, so I would take some more of that fresh Parmesan and sprinkle it on top. And if you were garnishing it for friends or family, you could always take a nice little fresh sprig of basil and just put it right on top like that. Weeknight meal. It's simple. I guess it didn't take that long while I was talking to you, but you certainly will have it happen much quicker than this. I need to grab a fork, and I'm going to
Okay.
wipe my plate
Now,
here
before you
because.
take a bite, because it does,
Okay.
I know, right? You're waiting for it. We do have a good question.
Yes.
The egg is cooked,
Yes.
right? Someone's asked, is the egg cooked enough? And yes, right, Emily?
Yes, it is. Now, if you don't believe me, you can always put it back on the heat, just on low, and cook it. But eggs, if you cook an egg in a frying pan, you know how quick scrambled eggs happen, fried eggs. So think of it that way. You have all this hot pasta, and we also have a hot creamy mixture because remember, we took that hot pasta water and tempered the Greek yogurt. So all that coming together cooks that one egg. What happens often is people want to cook it longer, and then that's when you start to see the separation of the egg, so it almost looks like it's little bits of egg in it. So here you still get that really beautiful nice creaminess, and in all honesty the yogurt actually helps protect it and create that creaminess, that creamy texture, and gives you that nice smooth element to it too, which is fabulous. And it smells so good in here. I really wish I could like walk this to you guys and have you smell it with the fresh parm and the pesto and the roasted vegetables. It smells amazing.
Okay, that sounds great. That looks great. We're gonna have Emily
I'm
do
gonna
the
I'm gonna
official.
dig in. By the way, I've had this pesto. I also just have like toasted bread and use the pesto on top, and then put some of the roasted veggies. Just as a quick little, I was hungry when I was working on the recipe, and it was fabulous. So if you need a little snack while you're making it, you could do that too.
Well, and this is, oh, there we go. For those of us who have not had lunch yet or dinner, that looks fantastic. But I mean, when we create these recipes, that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to get you thinking about how else could you use, I mean, using the kale pesto, made with the Greek yogurt and the kale and the nuts, definitely you can use it in a whole bunch of other different ways. And then there's a big smile on Emily's face. I'm just looking at that.
I love pasta,
This
and
is
I'm also
so
trying to.
delicious.
I'm trying to get enough on my fork that it doesn't like splatter all over me, and I don't look silly.
I know. No, it's okay. You do that. So we actually have other recipes and I'm going to show you. So I want to thank Emily. I'm going to just quickly share my screen let's grab this. There we go. All right. We have other recipes we've done with Oikos high protein Greek yogurt. We've made bagels, everything seasoned Greek yogurt bagels, and with a Greek yogurt spread. We have a roasted veggie cobbler. This is one of our most popular recipes on the website. We use the Oikos Greek yogurt actually in the topping and also in the delicious cobbler base. And a garlic rapini pizza bianca. The Greek yogurt was used in the dough, and both doughs. So for the bagel and for the pizza dough, no yeast. It was the Oikos Greek yogurt that basically made this amazing base for the pizza and the bagel. And then the pizza also has the creamy topping before we added the rapini. And also, a treat now and again, we all need that. So we put in a Greek yogurt mocha ice cream, really easy, no churn ice cream. So all of these recipes, along with all our other recipes, are available on the website at osteoporosis.ca/recipes. So please check them out. We also want to, sorry, my cursor's not going forward. There we go. We want to thank our partners, Danone Canada and Oikos Greek Yogurt, because they help us create fantastic programming like this. So thank you so much to them, and to Emily Richards, as always. She did a fantastic job. Thank you for leading us through this cooking demo.
Thank you, Tracie.
Now, you're welcome. And now coming up with Emily. So we're doing this on the 21st of March. We have a cooking demo and a cook along. So if you're new to our cook alongs, we had one in January. If you're in the GTA, so Greater Toronto area, and we only have a few spots left, you can actually register. It's $15. You will get the ingredients for a serving of 4 for stovetop beef curry delivered to you. and you will cook along with Emily. And so, like I said, there's only a few spots left. If you don't want to cook along or you're not in the area, you can also just register for free for the cooking demo and join us and watch us make this, another fabulous recipe. So that you can just osteoporosis.ca/event. If you just go to the homepage, all of the links are readily available. So don't even worry if you're not going to catch the tag at the end of the URL. The other thing I just wanted to mention is we have, sorry, clearly my advance is not working. Not sure what's going on. There we go. Sorry, I'm going to go back one. There we go. I missed that one. We have a new podcast that just came out, How to Safely Start Exercising at Any Age with Dr. Laura Jan Gregorio. And if you missed the webinar on menopause, what you should know with Dr. Nesha Yüksel, it was a very good webinar, very popular. It is on the OC Replay webpage. You can watch the recording, and this cooking demo has been recorded. So if you've registered, which you all have, you will get that link. Make sure to subscribe if you have not already to the national newsletter. That way you get information and updates and notices of webinars and events straight to your inbox. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Again, thank you to everyone, Danone Canada, Oikos, High Protein Greek Yogurt, Emily, and all of you for joining us. Thank you so much for spending your part of your afternoon or early evening with us. Have a wonderful rest of your day and happy cooking. Thanks, everyone.